Hey guys, welcome back to Normalize the Conversation. My name is Francesca, and today I'm here with actress, comedian, and host of Antoinette and Friends, Antoinette Peragine. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So how are
Yeah.
you?
That's a loaded question. I think the new norm is it depends on what time of day you ask.
Right.
I'm great. Sometimes I'm just feeling really great during the day, and then every now and then I'll be like, fuck, like what's happening? What's happening? I just been like sort of trying to figure out like what is that feeling that comes upon me. And to be perfectly honest with you, I see a lot of people kind of going through like the ups and downs of like trying to navigate, the new normal. Yeah. But mostly, to answer your question, mostly I'm good. I'm good. I'm staying afloat. How about you?
I'm good. I am super excited because I have a petition that just went out for making mental health treatment accessible to all. So I'm super excited because I feel like we're finally getting somewhere where we can hopefully make some real change. But I love how honest you are with your answer, because I think this pandemic really taught us the question, how are you, is a greeting. It's not a real question. People don't actually want to know how you are. And it's terrible.
That's true. And I always answer that. I try to answer it, honestly, because I don't, it's like if you're going to ask me, I'm going to answer it. But I think actually it's such an important question to ask because we're all in this kind of situation together. And I think we're all struggling with like trying to figure out like what's going on. And without getting long-winded, I do think that everybody's kind of like waiting for things to go back to the way they were. And I get the sense that they're never going back to the way they were. And so many people have a lot of need right now, which is why I'm here with you today. I'm really inspired by the work you do, Francesca. And I'm like very impressed with how much traction you've gained in the time that, and you're so young, in the field and in helping people. And can I just tell the story about the hoodie?
Yes.
So, so I was wearing this incredible hoodie that Francesca sent me, and I was going to get a COVID test, which I'm doing every other week because I have to be careful, in my work environment, which is quite small. But I'm wearing the hoodie and I'm there at the urgent care, and the nurse is like staring at my chest. And I'm like forgetting, what I'm wearing. And I'm like, what's she looking at? She's looking at my very ample chest. And I was wearing the hoodie that Francesca sent me, and she was like almost emotional. Well, she was emotional. She was like, where did you get that? And it's the hoodie that Francesca sponsored or had made or for your organization. And it's, you are loved,
It's you are seen, you are heard, you are loved, you are valid, you are worthy, you are enough.
You are enough, which is the thing that I resonate with, because my entire life, I was always trying to be enough. Like I never felt like I was enough. I was always trying to and I was in a kind of a fight with myself. Like it wasn't like I was competing with other people. I was competing with my own idea of my own standard of myself, which is an exhausting battle. And you can't really win because we are enough. We are enough the moment we're born. But anyway, she was just emotional, and she said, where did you get that? And I said, well, it was gifted to me by this organization. And she said, well, my daughter is struggling. She's in high school and it's her birthday coming up, and I would love to get that for her. And she was just emotional. And literally within an hour of me calling Francesca, that hoodie was on its way to this nurse that I don't know, to this daughter that I don't know. And I'm sure she'll have it in time for March 1st, which is her birthday, I think, around there. So anyway, thank you for that. And thank you for the work you do. And I'm really honored to be here. It's really important time for us to all help each other.
Thank you. And I love that you were wearing the hoodie and resonated with that message, because so many of us do. I think a lot of us growing up, the world tells us who we have to be and why we aren't enough. There's so many influences telling us all the things we should be instead and how we need to be better. And a lot of times we don't realize that we are enough. So when I was designing the clothing collection for the nonprofit, I wanted a collection that not only was raising money for treatment for everybody, but it was also resonating with people, and that if you walked down the street and you were wearing it and somebody saw it, they felt safe and comfortable, and like they knew that they could just talk to you, say hi, and that you wouldn't be like a safe place, like you wouldn't judge them. And I just am so happy that you had that experience with it, because that means it worked. What I was going for worked.
Totally. And, even further now with people having to wear masks, which we have to do, it's further, can be further alienating, right? Or not alienating, but like hard to connect. And so this hoodie, which is it's really, and it's also a gorgeous hoodie. Like I don't typically wear these things, but it was like so comfy and cozy and well fitting. And so, it's kind of like a conversation breaker as well, even when we have to be wearing masks and we don't really know what each other is feeling because we can't see each other's faces.
Exactly. And during this pandemic, I never realized how much I relied on a stranger's smile. Right?
How about this? Even relied on my own ability to smile.
Yeah.
Like that's even what I feel like, getting a smile, because I like to smile and I like to connect. And I went to Trader Joe's not that long ago and they're like, where have you been? Because I literally would go in that store and I would have like people, the people who work there were like, take stupid videos. I'd be like doing, me, like doing stupid videos. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And they're like taking the videos. Like it was like a little party. Like I really like to connect, with people. And they were like, where have you been? And I'm like, it's hard for me to like be out and not be able to share and smile and connect and like show my teeth, and say hi. And I have to pick up, and I did do that one time, and I got yelled at the store, and I was just like, the fear levels are so high, and I get it. Of course, people are afraid, but like my own ability to smile at people and express myself was the hard part for me. So being smiled at and being able to smile at people, I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing that must be so hard for you is you have like the brightest smile. Like when you smile, it's impossible to not smile back. Like it lights up a room. So to not be able to share that smile has to be one of the hardest things, because it's a gift.
I received that squarely on my heart. Thank you. And it's been a gift to be able to have Antoinette and Friends, because that like literally came out of nowhere, in a way. It was like, okay, show's canceled, COVID. And the next thing you know, I pivoted into a show where I don't have to wear a mask and I'm able to connect, and I'm able to connect with, like, this is like so important to me. So yeah. I mean, not being able to be out, I was out, and I've got a lot of great neighbors, and a couple of them are older guys, and he was just like, you could just see, the level of depression. And he was just like, am I ever gonna sit at a bar and talk to people I don't know and have a drink? And it sounds so simple, but like connectivity, being able to reach out and connect when you're alienated from people, like for me, that's like a hard, very, very hard thing. And I'm comfortable alone. I think that's kind of what's happening in a way too. Like I realized like this week was a very different week than any other week that I've experienced in this whole year of COVID. And I sense that it's been that way certainly everybody around me and my besties and my people who are close to me, but like people, because I talk to a lot of people, and this particular week was rough. And I got a feeling like things aren't changing back quick enough. Yeah. And everybody's like in a pause. But here's the thing. If you don't know how to be with yourself and you're forced to pause, that can be pretty rough.
Yeah. Because
you don't know what to do. I mean, people read, people don't read. How much TV can you watch? I'm finding people doing drugs. People doing a lot of drugs. People are drinking a lot. People are eating a lot. And that's okay for a bit, but now it's going on too long. And they don't, and I just feel like people don't have a lot of tools about how to just, not everybody, certainly, like I was talking on the Norman Seif show, just about people who are creative, right? We're used to the unknown, right? We're always creating something new, and then we're trying, and then we're throwing it out. We're kind of used to reinventing, right? And being with ourselves and playing music. But a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people are not creatives, or they're creatives, but they don't know they're creatives, and they work a job. So I'm just like, without getting long-winded, I just felt like this particular week, it was rough. Like everywhere I turned, people were in crisis. So I'm hoping that the world is going to open up soon, so that people can get back to being in a social atmosphere, so that they can feel supported. Because the truth is, we're all interconnected, and we all need each other.
Yeah.
And once we have each other, that feeling of desperation kind of falls away. Even if it's for the moment, it falls away. So yeah, it's an interesting time. It's a very interesting time to be alive, because this has never happened before. And I think that's also a part of this, is that people don't know, because it's never happened before, you don't know what to do. You can't really look to the past to tell you what to do. So you're kind of like having to find how to do this, and how to make a new job for yourself, or get along with your kids that you don't get along with, or get along with your mother. It's like, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
And first, I'm sorry it's been a rough week for you, but I love how you talked about coping and people using drugs, alcohol, binge eating, everything, because we don't know how to cope. And I think the pandemic really taught us that our society as a whole has failed on teaching us how to cope through difficult times. We don't learn this in school. We don't have resources and education widely available for anyone. There's not a single platform you can go to and learn about what you're feeling. Whether you have depression or you're feeling depressed, there are different coping mechanisms you can use to help you get through those times, and people don't know that. How crazy is it that it's 2021 now and people don't know how to cope? And that's not anyone's fault, but our society as a whole, for not ever implementing that in schools, for not having these resources widely available. The government should have came out with a list of resources and how to get help, and a list of coping mechanisms, just something. And mental health was pushed to the side during this pandemic, and we're seeing suicide rates increase. Yeah. More people die from suicide than the flu every year. There's a good chance that more people are going to die from suicide by the end of this pandemic than from the pandemic itself. And that's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. And the thing that I take away from it is that something tells me that that's what the takeaway is from the pandemic, is that we're learning how deficient we are with coping with our own emotionality. And I know that sounds like, what does that mean? But like, if you don't know how you feel in any given moment, you're not really communing with yourself. You're not really able to take care of yourself. And society as a whole hasn't really helped us to make friends with our own emotions. In fact, not only does it tell us how to feel about things, it tells us that feeling, which is a feminine energy, is bad.
Yeah.
Doing is good, but feeling is bad. And I actually think that men who are real, men, the gender of the male of men, must have a hard time, because that's not even okay as a man. And if you don't have your emotions, you don't even have yourself. And so I think maybe the takeaway, I try to find the positive in the pandemic, and I feel like there has been a lot of positive. I feel like people are realizing that they need to take care of themselves, and that we can't look to others, to the leaders or the government or the state or the church, whatever it is. You can't look to other people to take care of yourself, to show you how to take care of yourself. That's a kind of a inside job. And that goes for our health too. I think, I don't want to use the word criminal, but it's like people are walking around with masks in nature by themselves. I don't even understand what's happening when I see that, or somebody driving a car with a mask. That I don't know why they're doing that, because it's not good for you to wear the mask unless you have to. but also it depletes the immune system because you're breathing in your own, what you're breathing out, you're breathing back in. It makes you nervous. It causes you not to have deep breath, and it weakens your immune system. But okay, we have to do it. Understood. But then let's talk about how to strengthen your body. Let's talk about how important vitamin D is, how important the sun is, to get out in the sunshine, which is vitamin D, to exercise our bodies, but also exercise our lungs, deep breathing, all of that. So I think that there are large sectors of the culture now that are talking about that. And that's as a result of the pandemic. So I just think there's a lot of change afoot. And I think they're positive changes. And I think these kinds of conversations that you're having with people are the conversations that we have on our blog as we're walking, just with people, really important just to share information and to share the learnings. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, this could have been much worse. I mean, I think sometimes, like, what if it was like the Black Plague where people were dying in the streets? Or what if it was like a nuclear war, like some big thing that causes the planet to stop the way it has? People have died and it's been horrible, and people have lost their jobs, and people are, I mean, it is horrible. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, like, in a way, it's like a pause in a kind of an almost elegant way where we're getting a chance to stop. And it's not the most horrific thing that ever happened. Does that make sense? I don't mean to diminish what's happening for people, but, you know, it's a pause that's been needed for a long time. So, and the whole world is doing it, which is amazing, kind of amazing, right?
It is amazing, but it's also very scary that the whole world had to stop and we didn't know how to deal with it. We had no idea. And we're a year into the pandemic.
We still don't.
And we still don't. Yeah. How do we still not know? How do we still not have these conversations happening, these tools, these resources? We're still not doing it. And it blows my mind. And you touched on so many amazing points. I really want to go back to when you're talking about men and men not being allowed to show emotion. You know, the one thing that we do teach kids, like growing up, is within fairy tales and in superheroes and all that stuff, that men have to be strong and save the world. And women are the damsel in distress. We can cry, we can get upset, and that's it. And we wait for the man to save us. So now flash forward to a pandemic where the world has shut down, people losing their jobs, people losing their houses, people can't eat.
Yeah.
And it's like women should be the ones breaking down and men should figure it all out. And that's not how it works. But that's what we were taught. And that's crazy.
We were taught so many crazy things. I think I once said to a friend of mine recently about, like, I'm really aware, and I've been aware since I was really little, just about like the narrative that we tell our kids and what's sort of been, I don't want to say fed to us because I don't want to make it sound diabolical, but if you watch movies from the time you're born, it feeds you like a narrative about yourself. And a woman does this, and a man does this, and if a man does this to a woman, this is how a woman reacts. Like, it's literally, when we watch TV and movies, we're being shown how we're supposed to behave and respond and feel about such and such. And I was saying to a friend of mine, I was like, I wonder what I would be, Antoinette, maybe not even that name. Like, what would I be like? What would I look like? What would I be like if I wasn't told all the things that I was told? I'd probably be really, can I curse on your show?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Because I'm from Brooklyn and it just comes out. But I'd be really fucking strong, right? I might be not as careful about the things that I say or do. I would look really different. Like, what might we be like if we weren't conditioned to be? What would I be as a human being if I wasn't conditioned from the time I was born? And I think that we're breaking out of those things. I certainly have. I was born into an old world Italian family. My parents came, my father went over the Brooklyn Bridge on a horse. I come from old world Italians where the woman was supposed to do what the woman was supposed to do. I was never not really encouraged to go to college. It just was like, it's suppression. Women just took care of the house and whatever, and it's generations of that.
Yeah.
And my parents immigrated from Italy. So there I was thrust into New York City, the most progressive city in the world, but like being raised by the old world, but seeing the new world, raised by the old world, seeing the new world, wanting to make my parents happy, but then seeing the possibilities. It was fucking confusing.
Right.
And I was supposed to get married and have a child and all of that. But as a kid, I remember looking at like the marriage, getting married and the white dress. And I was just like, I just didn't resonate with that. I wanted to have a partner. But I didn't buy into like the fairy tale aspect of it. Although I ended up being in a show called Tony and Tina's Wedding, where I actually married my Tony the actor. I married him and we have children together. And so it's like I got to kind of participate in it, but never really live it. But my point is that it's really hard to break out of what you've been told you are supposed to be. But I'm so pleased with myself and proud of myself that I was able to do it and step out of what I was told to be. My life is much richer. It's harder. It's scarier, but it's so much more full because I'm allowed to discover and explore. Like, who am I? What do I want? What are my dreams? Because the truth is, as women, and men, believe me, I'm not saying men have it harder. My heart breaks because men have a hard go of it because they're supposed to take care of everything. They're supposed to take care of everything. They're not supposed to show emotion. They're not supposed to talk about, how do you live on this planet at this time and not talk about how scared you are? And then they got to take care of the families and support them. So I guess my point is that we've been told so many things, and I just feel like it's a special time for that. And I'm hopeful that everything that we were told that we're redefining. I'm hopeful because I've done it for myself, and I was going somewhere with this being a woman thing. It was like a really important point and I completely forgot it. But we'll have to move on, Francesca. It's my sister's name.
Is it really?
And my grandmother's name.
I love that.
I know. We call my sister Franca. When we were little, my parents used to take us to Italy. So lucky. So lucky, because most of the immigrants that came to this country, they were like, we don't want to know. We want to speak English. We want to be American. My parents became American pretty quickly, but they didn't speak Italian in the household. But anyway, they would take us back to Italy to see the family, which was amazing. But when we would go back to Italy, we all had different names. Like I was Tony, my sister was Franca. Like we all had like these Italian names. I don't know why that happened, but it's kind of fun.
I love that.
I digress.
I love that. But I want to touch back on what you were saying because, I grew up in a very strict Italian family, very conservative, very, when I went to college, a lot of comments on when you're getting your MRS degree, it was always about getting married and raising a family. And I am the polar opposite type of person. I'm like, tell me what to do and I'm going to do the opposite. So I did my bachelor's, I did my master's. And then I started talking about mental health and they were like, don't do that. You can't do that. That's not okay. And I was like, that's great that you don't think it's okay. I'm like, but times have changed and we're not supposed to just fit into this narrative anymore. We don't have to fit into this narrative that was made for us. And I think
not at all.
So hard.
And I do remember what I was going to say about being a woman. It's exactly to your point about just like we're constantly as women absorbing our environment.
Yes.
And it's like we absorb things in order to make them okay. And when we get into relationship, we sacrifice as we're told to, right? Relationships are hard and you gotta, their work, you're told a lot of things about what relationships are. But as women, it's germane to a woman to make everything okay. Right? And to make the household okay. And so we absorb negativity, we absorb we sacrifice, we constrict who we are in order to be in a relationship. And I think men do too. I think we do that. I think men probably try to be what the woman wants. Yeah. My point is that there's women walking around with a piece of them that they feel is there, but they can't really explore it because they're taking care of the kids. They're in the relationship, and it's like becomes like it's a contract, right? And so what happens when you start in a relationship you start to explore yourself? It's scary because it means change. It means that what happens if I really explore who I am and kind of let that little piece of me breathe? Maybe I might change too much. Yeah. Will I be loved? Will I be cared for? Who will take care of me? Especially if it's in a traditional relationship where the wife is taking care of the kids, and that's a contract too, right? And the husband is the provider, right? Who's going to take care of me? If I change, is that going to be okay? So yeah, that's big. And I think women do that to men too. I think women, because we've been taught, oh, is he going to, where's my Mr. Right? Is he the one? I used to think like, the one for what? Like the one. You mean to make me completely happy? That's nobody's job. But we're taught that, right? And then we're on the lookout. My husband used to tell me that all the time. And he's like, they say men don't want to commit. He really taught me this, and I really appreciate this. He said, it's not true. Men want to commit. They just don't want to commit to somebody else's idea of who they should be. And I'm like, well, tell me more about that. So women have a narrative. They're looking for the guy. They're looking for the one they're going to marry. And sometimes when you're looking for something, you're looking at it through your lens. Therefore, you're not really seeing who's in front of you. You're not really seeing the man who's in front of you. And a man can feel that. They can feel that they're not really being seen for who they are. And that's why they don't want to commit. And I give them a lot of credit for that. They shouldn't. So it's like it's nobody's fault. I don't want to blame the narrative, because who set the narrative? It's been in place for a long freaking time. And I want to say this too. We're seeing that, our leaders are deficient. We're not getting what we need. We're not getting mental health. The poor veterans, they don't even get, health care. It's like, we're seeing a lot of things, but the truth is that it's always been so. It's just now we see it. Yeah. And I am encouraged that in seeing it and having these conversations, that we can begin to change it. We can begin to shift things. And I do think a shift is afoot.
I agree.
I do.
I love that, because we are seeing it for the first time, but are we willing to stand up and fight against it? And with that narrative for women who we can't stand up, we can't speak out because we have to keep the peace, it makes it really difficult. And when we do stand up and speak out, then we're difficult.
Now, let me ask you this, because I'm hearing this in you. So that's your experience, right? Is it because even in your own home, when you've tried to step away from tribe, let's say it that way, you've been met with like, hey, that's not what you're supposed to be doing, right? And that's courageous of you. And I commend you and I honor you for doing that, because actually the world needs you to do that. And actually your family does too. They just don't know it. When a child steps away for mom and dad, even though they may not have the words or the communication skills, they do want you to be safe. And they only know what they know sometimes. So when you're stepping out like that, it's scary for them, especially when you're a beautiful girl. You're a beautiful young girl. They want you to be safe. So I hear that in what you're saying. And I just want to say that I think you're very courageous and you give other people courage in doing so. So, I think I don't like to think, Francesca, that I live in a glass bubble. I don't think I do. I think the cat's out of the bag. I think the world, Eckhart Tolle, I don't know if you know who he is. He said something so beautiful. He wrote The Power of Now, and he's been on Oprah. And I think Oprah does, he's on, he does meditation and stuff like that. But he said, what's happening across the planet due to technology is that everyone who has a phone has access to the same information. That has never happened before. So somebody who's in the Amazon, they may not have shoes on their feet, but more than likely they have a phone. And we all have access to the same information. And it's causing the world to wake up all at the same time. I don't think that's ever happened probably anywhere in the universe, that we've woken up at the same time. And so he says, you cannot stop the flowering of human consciousness. And he said something, and I hope that I'm getting this right, but it's so beautiful. He said, at one point, for millions of years, the planet was just green, as it changed as it changed the gases, and it became a planet, and it rained and everything turned green. He said, but there was a point that the first flower opened. And once the first flower opened, flowers opened on the other side of the world. So it's evolution. But I feel because of technology, our evolution has been sped up and people are trying to catch up. And I'm just encouraged. I'm encouraged because I think it's a rocky road, because it's chaos right now. All the structures. This is what I felt personally over the last week. How people said to me recently, how do you become an actress? And I used to be able to say, well, this is what you do. You do this and you do that. I'm like, none of that is true anymore. A friend of mine was creating art, right? And, what do you do when you create art? You have a gallery opening. You do this, you do that. None of it is true. And we're waiting for those things, those benchmarks, the structure of how we do what we do to come back. And they may not. So it's just not there anymore. Yeah. That's what's been happening for me. That's what's been like, wow, I'm like floating in space. How do I do what I do? And what is success if there's no benchmarks? What is the degree of success? Used to be money is the degree of how you measure success. It's not so much anymore. So what is that? What are my goals? And how will I know that I've gotten there? And that's the terror and the chaos that's happening now. But I love the idea that when you have a chaotic environment, you have to look at that as a positive thing, because chaos is what happens when things are reorganizing. And I believe right now that we are in a process, in a state of reorganization. And we, you, me, people who are willing to communicate, have tools that maybe we can share at least what's going on. Because I don't think I'm wrong about that. I do think the structures, the things that we've come to depend on, are not there. And maybe they'll come back and maybe they won't. But I think that's the nervousness that people feel. And then people have, you think about all the celebrities that people have lots of big homes and, things that they have to carry, and it's like, well, how am I going to do that now? Can I still do that? I mean, it's like, it levels the playing field that we're all in this situation together. And I don't even know where I'm going with that, except to say that I believe that we are heading towards a better world, and we are creating it right now.
I hope so. I really hope we are. And I hope that this world doesn't have those same structures as before, because those structures, as great as they were for consistency and knowing what was going to happen next, predictability, they were limiting. Everyone knew exactly what you needed to do, how this was supposed to happen.
Exactly.
We all followed the same process. It took away a lot of individuality. And it took away the ability to learn and explore ourselves and who we want to be. It took away our own level of authenticity that none of us realized. And for the first time, we get to explore ourselves in a completely different way, explore who we want to be and how we want to do it. We don't have to do it like anyone else. No one knows what they're doing. we all get to figure it out together in our own ways. And I think that's absolutely amazing.
That's so well put.
Thank you.
You're amazing. You're an amazing young person, honestly. And I don't mean that. I'm just saying, like, wow. I mean, look at that. And you have years and years and years ahead of you. And you're like alive at a time where in 30 years time, you'll probably be traveling to Mars. I mean, think about it. I may not see that. My kids will. They were talking on the Joe Rogan experience. I think Elon Musk was saying, I think within 4 years, people will be able to do that. I'm like, okay, that's amazing. So I think I'm happy that I chose to be alive at this time. I think most days I feel like I am, and some days I just like whatever. But you're a pretty together young person, and I'm very impressed and happy that I know you.
Thank you. I'm happy that I know you, because Antoinette and Friends, I think, is one of the most amazing things that came out of this pandemic. And when I connected with Dana and with BKO, and she had you on a live, and then I went back and watched all of your episodes, and you're either laughing hysterically at the end, you're sat with like this one question of something that you say that's always so insightful. And I take notes. Like, I'm the person who takes notes because you say some of the most amazing things. Like, there was this one episode with Luciana where you talked about how with hardship and pain and suffering, all that you can do is make art. And that was so deep and amazing. I was like, wow. And we're all making art in different ways.
Yes. And that's that's my takeaway from my interview with Norman Seif. It's like creativity is not about making art. Creativity is about living in the unknown and being comfortable in the unknown. He went to JPL, NASA, the Jet Propulsion Lab, I think for 6 months, and filmed the people who put the Mars rover on Mars. And my point in bringing that up is he observed that without creativity, they couldn't have done that. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that we take what's inside and express it, however we express it. You know, mothers do it with their kids in a creative way. You know, we do it in all walks of life. I think it's an incredibly beautiful honor. This sounds so lofty, but to be a human being is a gift, because we're able to feel and cry and bleed. And I think because we've been taught that we're not supposed to feel those feelings. Somebody said to me about the American culture, because we're highly productive culture. Like, we get up early, you know, we used to be considered, I don't know if we still are, the hardest working nation, meaning that work is part of our sustainability. Like, that's in us. Like, we're workers, right? And I just thought to myself, that is so not, it doesn't help support the inside of us. And in Europe, being blue is okay. Like, when you're blue, it's kind of like accepted, like you're having a blue day. Here in this country, it means something's wrong with you, and you might need a Xanax or something. You might need a medication, like being blue. But I don't see that. I think being blue is beautiful. You know, being blue made me paint these walls blue, you know, and I just thought, I think I need my walls to be blue to support that feeling inside of me. And thank you for saying that. I loved that interview with Luciana. I was talking about it yesterday. I thought, she's somebody who's constantly creating. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, music, and it's just, she's music, flowers. I mean, she's in a constant state of creation, and therefore she's happy and healthy. And I think people will be happy and healthier when they find their voice and their ability to express their pain, because we all have it. I never trust anybody who says, I don't have pain. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm like, I love that. But like, I don't know how you can not have pain here. It's just like, it's a hard reality sometimes, you know, just even sometimes to see the people around you suffering. it's hard. So anyway, thank you for saying that. And thank you. I'm very excited about the direction of Antoinette and Friends. And my next three guests are just magnificent. And one of them has just been a part of my life for so long. And it's such an intimate relationship of beauty and depth and laughter and silliness to the extreme, and a lot of history. So I'm really excited, and thank you for saying that. I'm really pleased that I have Antoinette and Friends and that it's continued. April 23rd was when my show was canceled at the Canyon Clubs, the live stand-up show. And I think I did the first Antoinette and Friends right around that time. So it hasn't been very long that it's been going, and it's really has a life of its own. Do you know, like when a ship pulls away and there's the wake? I feel like the ship is Antoinette and Friends, and I'm just kind of like following along in the wake. It's cool.
I love that.
You know, sometimes things have momentum. Like, you know, you're in the right thing in life when it's more effortless.
Yeah.
People say, well, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I've got two sons, you know, and I'm like, it doesn't matter that you don't know. Just move in the direction of your greatest joy. Like, go where it makes you happy. That's where you're going to make your money. Always that. But we're not taught that. I certainly wasn't. My mother and father were like immigrants, hardworking. My father did whatever the fuck he had to do to put food on the table. Forget about joy. That was like not in the equation. So this is a big quantum jump I've made, let's say in my generation, from where my parents, how they lived, to this conversation we're having. I mean, this was like not on the table as a possibility. So I'm very encouraged. I don't think civilizations change overnight. And we've had a year of this pandemic. And I just think it's like, wow, what an amazing year for the whole world to be going through. And it really goes to show how interdependent we are. If a virus can spread like that, I mean, that just goes to show you how the world is like this and we're all connected.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people didn't realize how connected we were. And I remember I did this one interview with a psychologist in India, and she was like, people don't realize that the information from social media that we're all putting out there tends to be this massive news source in other countries. We're all connected in ways we don't realize. So when we put information out, especially with like mental health, it's so important that we're putting the right information out, because we're all connected, and putting out the wrong information might be very dangerous in places where they don't have the right information at all available.
Very good point. Very good point. And there's a lot. I watched, are you on, I watch Gaia a lot. I will tune into that channel, has some interesting interviews, but I heard something that I thought, oh, this is good. This is really good, because there's so much misinformation. Sometimes you'll listen to something and it'll have some information that you know is true, but then there's a lot around it may not be true, right? And so I think we're all trying to figure out, like, what's true and what's not. Is this pandemic, this virus, really dangerous? Or is it just like the flu? And, you know, and people, you know, countries are shutting down, and Italy, you know, lost a lot of people. But then there are people like walking around like it's not, so it's like, it's very challenging to kind of assess what's happening. And that's across the board in every discipline and every field, right? And so this woman said, which I thought was so cool, she said, instead of going in deep with these things that you're finding, zoom out and try to look at everything as a whole, look at information as a whole. Because if you go into one area, it'll take you down a rabbit hole where some of it is true, but some of it isn't, because it's hard to know. This is like the generation of like social media, right? This has never happened before. People are posting things and you're going, okay, well, that sounds true. The way they're saying it is true, but it may not be true. It may be somebody's point of view. So it's like, it's a very strange time. And I liked that piece of advice. That was like, that was my takeaway, is like, just step back a little bit and not, because, people are afraid, like they go down the conspiracy rabbit hole of vaccines, and there's chip in it, and they're trying to control. And, people can take their fear that they have and place it upon things. That's in a way what I sometimes feel like when people are driving in their car and they have their mask on. I'm like, it's almost like a demonstration of fear. They don't need to have it on in the car, but it's like they're afraid, so they'll keep it on, and it makes them feel safer. So you know what I mean? So I just feel like when people find something that feels right, it can take you down a rabbit hole. And I think it's just important for me to kind of like, oh, I can't go there because it's making me afraid, and it may not even be true. Why am I spending my time there? I just zoom out a little bit and look at the world as a whole, and look at the information in a more comprehensive way. It's my experience that the world is pivoting to a better place.
I love that. It's so important that we zoom out and see the world as a bunch of different puzzle pieces, and not just the one puzzle piece that's put right in front of us.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining me today. You're absolutely amazing.
This is lovely. This is really lovely. And I appreciate being here. And thank you for having me on.